Hi there, it's Karen at Simply Living for Him. I tried to upload my daily devotional video yesterday and it just won't work. So I'm trying again. But I know I took a few days off from the devotionals, but I did want to share with you some encouragement today. Just as a reminder, these videos are on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching there, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Or you can find these videos in the Simply Living for Him online community. And that community is free. It's for all women. We have Bible studies and groups for all kinds of things to help you get in the Bible. And you can join at simplylivingforhim.com/community. Today, I wanted to talk about drowning. Have you ever felt like you were so overwhelmed that you just felt like you were drowning? I know I have felt that way in my life, especially when it comes to things like worry or anxiety. There's two particular times in my life where I can remember really this overwhelming feeling of drowning. That was the only way I could describe it. And it was the first time about 15 years ago when I decided to homeschool my daughter. She was just entering kindergarten, and I really felt God was calling me to that, but I was terrified and I didn't want to do it. And the closer we got to that first day, the more overwhelmed I became. And the more I felt like I was drowning. I just felt like, maybe I was in over my head, or all these fears and worries and voices and things were coming at me. And interestingly enough, last year, when it was time when she had finally graduated that whole journey and she was going off to college, that exact same feeling came back, where I got so overwhelmed with the future and what's going to happen and is this the right decision? And I would just remember completely feeling like I was drowning. That was the only way I could describe it to my husband. I was like, I just can't catch my breath. And so those two times, it's amazing how God ministered to me through his word. The first time I remember going to the passage in Matthew 14, where Jesus walks on water. Jesus walks on water, and then he invites Peter to do the same. And Peter is able to actually walk on water, to defy all human laws and all of human strength, and to actually walk on water as Jesus did. Jesus shows us that he is from God when he does that, because he defies earthly, laws by being able to walk on water. And then he gives Peter the supernatural strength to do that. And the really cool thing about that passage, I'd invite you to open it up in your Bible and to look it up in the translation of your choice, and spend some time there and let God minister to you and let him show you, exactly what he wants to in that passage. But what I remember is that, Peter says, if it's really you, Lord, tell me to come and I'll walk on the water. And Jesus is like, all right, come. And for a few steps, Peter walks on the water. And then he very quickly notices the things around him, the wind and the waves and the storm. And he takes his eyes off of Jesus. And if you know the story, then you know what happens. He begins to sink. And that's literally, when I describe those two times in my life, what I would say would happen to me. The first time I felt like God called me to homeschool. I'm going to do this. This is all, in his strength. And as soon as I started to do it, I started to listen to the voices around me, or listen to my own, negativity in my head, or just look at the circumstances around me and get so overwhelmed that I forgot that God was the one calling me. And I took my eyes off of him. And that's when I started to feel that overwhelming sense of drowning. And then the same thing, when she was going off to college, God had clearly called her to this journey. He had clearly called her this college. And when I forgot that for a little bit, and I started to say, what if, and all of these things that might happen, and all of the worries, and, this maybe isn't the best idea and all that, I began to sink. But when I put my eyes back on him and remembered, He has called her out upon these waters, right, to walk on water. And just like when I first started homeschooling, he had called me upon that water to walk on that water. He wanted to prove that I could not do that in my own strength, that I could only rely on him. And same thing when she went off to college. And so anytime you get overwhelmed or you get overcome with worry or fear, or, just like right now, especially a lot of us are having different fears. If you are overwhelmed in your daily life, if you are overwhelmed with your family, if you are overwhelmed with personal issues, with work issues, if you are overwhelmed just getting out of bed some days, I've been there. I want to encourage you. Do not look at the circumstances around you, but look at who is calling you in the circumstances. When God equips you, you have no fear. You do not have to feel like you can't do anything, because you can even walk on water. When God calls you to something, he will absolutely equip you. We are not supposed to do things in our own strength. Just like it says in John 15:5, apart from me, you do no good thing. He is the vine and we are the branches, and we do nothing good apart from him. So I want to encourage you today. If you ever feel like you're drowning, if you ever feel like you're overwhelmed, that's because earthly circumstances can do that to us. But we serve a God who tells us that we can even walk on water in his strength. So all we need to do is turn our eyes upon Jesus. Remember that hymn, that beautiful hymn? And the things of this earth like grow slowly dim, right? The wind and the waves and the storm, that fades into the background because we're walking on water, not in our own strength at all, not at all in our own strength, but in God's strength. And so he calls you to get out of bed this morning and walk on water. He calls you to put one foot in front of the other and go forward. He calls you to walk on water. He, tells you not to have fear, all of those things. And really the exciting thing is, so many times we fail, right? Not that that's exciting, but what happens is when I start to look at the wind and the waves and all that, I sink, right? Just like Peter did, he sank. But very important, when he sank, he cried out, Lord, save me. He turned his eyes back upon Jesus. And so if you feel like you've gotten off track and you're drowning, you can turn your eyes back to Jesus and just say, Lord, save me. Because the beautiful thing is, Jesus did not leave Peter there in that water to drown. He reached out. He rebuked him a little bit. He said, oh, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? But he pulled him out of that water. And he will do the same for us. We just need to first take that first step of faith out onto the water. And then if we do begin to sink, because as humans, our natural inclination is going to look at the circumstances around us and look at the earthly things around us going on. And if we begin to sink, very important, we can call out his name. He will put out his name. He will pull us in, and he will rescue us from whatever we feel like we're drowning in. And he'll remind us, oh, you have little faith. You just need to have faith. And so whatever is causing you today to feel like you're drowning, to feel like you're overwhelmed, go to that story in Matthew and remember that God will supply all you need to even walk on water.